So welcome back everybody. We're going to go over a quick episode right here explaining how to backwash and flush your sand filter out for your pool. But more importantly, I want to show you something I come up with in order to check the pressure and bleed off air, which is important whenever you do that backwash and rinse process. Problem is, a lot of these pool pumps I'm noticing of all different brands come with either an option to bleed off air or an option to put a gauge in and monitor pressure, which is important. It tells you whenever you need a backwash. They don't give you the option for both, and it leaves me scratching my head as to why. So I had to come up with a quick solution here so we can do both. So why is this important? You always want to gauge in on your filter itself, because whenever you first initially put your sand in and fire your filter up while it's nice and clean, you monitor the pressure. You make a note of where your standard pressure is with clean sand, and you watch your pressure gauge every so often. Depending on pollen in the air, dust, dirt, other debris that you get in your pool, well, eventually your sand filter becomes plugged up and the pump's having to work harder and it's building up more pressure inside of this unit. Thus, you watch your gauge, the needle on your pressure gauge, go up. And most pool companies are saying when you see a 5 to 7 psi increase on your pressure gauge, it's time to backwash that sand filter, which means we're going to run water through the exact opposite direction, knock all that debris and pollen and everything else loose out of here, algae, it's full of everything, and then we're going to rinse it, backwash it out to the yard. Now, I just want to let y'all know I'm eventually going to be building something right here, so I just have a short stub pipe to expel water out here to the yard. Most of you are going to have a waste pipe that's run down to a sewer or underground. You've got it run all different kinds of ways. Me, I just live out in the middle of nowhere. We're just going to waste it straight out to the yard, but eventually we're going to run a pipe down once I build me a little enclosure right here. All right, so check this out. Hopefully you can see right here on the side of the pump, my pump head filter housing right here came with this little device that you screw in. It seals it, has an O-ring, and this is how you bleed off pressure. You just back it out a few turns and it'll bleed air off that builds up in here whenever you're going through that backwash process. It's very important that you bleed that pressure off. Well, the problem is this is also, if you look in the manual, this is the same exact single hole that it shows to where you need to install your pressure gauge, and it threads right in. So how can I have both? How can I bleed pressure off and have a pressure gauge in here to know whenever I need to backwash the system? Well, you can't have both in a single hole. So here's a quick solution I picked up at the hardware store. I grabbed a couple of these 1/4 inch pipe nipples right here. 1/4 inch is the thread for my particular pump. Yours may vary, and they're 1.5 inches long. So we can thread one right in there. We're going to put some pipe tape on this in just a second. I also picked up a 1/4 inch pipe T. So now you can see where we're heading. We can thread that right on. I got another 1/4 inch by 1.5 inch pipe nipple that can go out on the end right here. And I bought a 1/4 inch cutoff valve. So now I have me a nice 1/4 turn valve to bleed my pressure off. I don't like the way all this looks, but this is something the factory should have provided. So since we put a T in over here, now, well, look at this. We can thread in our pressure gauge. I'll probably thread it in on this side, it's easier to view. And now we have a setup to where I can keep the valve closed and always watch my pressure gauge right here. And whenever I do my backwashing process, I can open this up, bleed the air off, be nice and safe, close it back off, and go back to just normal pressure gauge use. This should have came from the factory. Why it did not, I do not know. So all I'm gonna do is take some Teflon tape. You can use the liquid tape or the Teflon tape itself. And we want to seal up these threads right here on the end of all these threaded connections. So the reason I grabbed 1.5 inch pipe nipples, this is important, is so I could tighten them. If you get any shorter of a nipple than that, well, you're going to wind up damaging the threads. But the 1.5 inch is the shortest one that actually comes with a center section that you can grab and tighten and not damage any of your threads themselves. And I'll just keep repeating the process. Put some more thread tape on to where I'm going to put this T in. All right, so let's kick the pump on real quick and check our pressure gauge out. Look for any leaks as well. All right, pressure gauge is functioning like it should. So you can see mine's running a little above 10 psi. It's started from day one just below the 1 mark. So if I see this get up around the 16 or 17 psi range, I know it's time to back flush. We can monitor the pressure when we get 5, 6, or 7 psi above normal operating pressure. We can go through what I'm about to show you, how to backwash and rinse out your system. Now during this process, you could potentially get air trapped in the system when you're cleaning out strainer baskets, especially the ones in the pump. Sometimes you can get air in your system and it doesn't want to prime well, and trapped air can give you issues with flowing the water out. That's where this little bleeder valve right here can work great. You can open it until you see water actually flow out your system, close it back off. So what you're trying to do is purge the air out of the system. Now this has been working really well for me. I haven't had much issue with that, but I wanted a way to bleed the air off because that's going to eventually become a problem. So let me show you how we're going to backwash this system right here. So we're going to cut it off. It doesn't even need it right now according to the pressure I'm seeing, but let's go ahead and take care of that. But you always want to cut your pump off. You never want to rotate this dial on the top side of your filter while the pump is running. And here's another key. Always rotate this dial in the same direction. Don't work back and forth, or the actual O-ring in there, the seal that's on the bottom, you can work that loose or damage it. So I am always going to rotate in a clockwise fashion. That just seems to be the smart way to do this, but never back and forth. Keep that in mind. So if you take a look on top of our filter here, you'll see all these different indications. All we're honestly concerned with right now is filter, which is our normal operation. We're filtering through that sand right back out to the pool. And then we can press this dial down. Here how it just sucked air. Now we come around to the backwash. We're going to run on backwash for about 60 seconds, all while monitoring our water. By the way, if you have this plumbed down to a sewer or the long hose and you can't see the clarity of the water, you do have sight glasses on the majority of these, and you can watch. If it's milky and dirty, keep running until that is clear, or until you see that the water that you're blowing out the end of your pipe or hose is also clear. Then we're going to shut the pump back off. Never make adjustments on this while the pump is running. Then we're going to go to rinse and run for about 30 seconds. What that is doing is going back to normal operation, going back through the filter the correct way and rinsing out everything that we just stirred up. But it is not allowing it to run into your pool, or you would have a mess blown out into your pool. It's going to discharge it back out over here. And then we're going to cut the pump off again, rotate this around one more time, and go to rinse. And if we notice any air in the system or something doesn't seem correctly during any of this time and process, we can bleed the air off right here with what we just installed. All right, so now we're about to backwash for 60 seconds. This is going to blow water like mad. Keep in mind, if you put a hose on this, you'll see they sell backwash hoses. It's a blue rubber hose. It can whip around violently, so make sure you run it far away from you. I prefer a hard pipe method, eventually putting something toward the ground, and I'm still going to connect that pipe to something so it doesn't want to snap around. But I'm going to get out of the way right here because this is going to blow water everywhere. And we're going to do this again for 60 seconds. All right, you see all that nastiness that's coming out of there? That is all algae, pollen, and everything else that is trapped in my sand filter. So man, look at all that stuff that is no longer in my pool. Looks disgusting. I can tell you the majority of that's algae, being it's been in the 100-degree range here in Florida. And look at my sight glass. If I couldn't see this water being discharged, just watch that sight glass until it turns clear. And again, about 60 seconds should take care of this. It's already starting to clear up. Look at how filthy that water is on the ground down there. So here's the crazy part. That water was filthy, although it's clearing up within about 30 seconds, and I've seen no pressure increase on my gauge. A lot of manufacturers say do this every 7 to 10 days. I think that's probably a bit overkill based on what I'm seeing, except for in pollen season. We get pollen so thick down here in the spring in Florida, I bet I'll be backwashing this every 2 or 3 days, maybe even every day. The pollen comes in so thick and rests on so much, this pool is going to trap a ton of it. All right, it's been running clear for about 10 seconds. I think we're good. We're going to cut the pump off and we're going to go to rinse for 30 seconds. All right, again, cut the pump off before you rotate this, and always go in that same clockwise motion. Now we're on rinse. Kick this back on for 30 seconds, which will flush the filter out the exact opposite direction, and again puts it right back to the ground, not in our pool. Okay, that's 30 seconds. We're looking crystal clear. Now we're going to rotate this back to filter, and we're good to go. And again, if something doesn't seem right, gurgling, lots of air in your water, pump doesn't prime, things aren't pulling through properly, will bleed the air off of this new valve that we just put in. So let's kick everything back on, check it all out. All right, let's double check, see if we got any air in the system. Straight to water, everything looks good to go. All right, hopefully you enjoyed this quick little pool episode. Why that was not put in from the pool manufacturers beyond me, especially being the manual shows both the bleeder valve and both the pressure gauge installed. So a brass valve, a little T, a couple pipe nipples, you can whip this up really quick from any of your local hardware stores and get yourself back running and bleed that air out of the system if you're having any problems with that. We've got a lot more pool content coming. With it being in the 100 degrees down here in Florida, our pool has gotten so hot we couldn't use it until we started playing around with some fountains and other things, and we found a way to cool our pool off. We're going to cover that in an upcoming episode. Then we've got a deck build going on. We have lots of stuff out here for our outdoor space. Catch you on the next video.